Absolutely. Oh, it's
I
official.
didn't forget today. We're already so ahead of the game. Welcome, friends. We are tickled pink that y'all could join us today. Obviously, we're all coming together under sort of the Women-Led Sales Collective, and this has been my pride and joy for the past, honestly, like year or so. And our real mission here is to just bring remarkable women together and have them feel seen, heard, valued, talk about growth, talk about connection, and really sort of empower you as an entire being because, we are 360-degree humans. We have these, working conditions that we're dealing with. And yeah, how do we bring our best selves to the table? And so Dr. V. Boykin came into my life and I was forever changed. She came in and she said, I see what y'all are building. I'm excited about it. And I have some things to say about it. And I was like, please join us. And so she's coming to us, obviously, with a wealth of knowledge, former business owner for 10 years. And she's really looked at, the challenges that small businesses face, looked at how to optimize efficiency, and then her real expertise lies in creating these equitable work experiences for women. And she's worked to illustrate the importance of these social support systems that help us get to equity, right? And how we can do that with very simple shifts in the social environment. And so, without further ado, Dr. Boykin, welcome
Yes.
to the party.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What an introduction. Like I need to really produce now. All right. Ah, so the first thing I'm going to say, and I want to be very clear about it, is this is not an equality conversation. I'm not interested in talking about equality. I'm interested in talking about equity. And the reason that that makes a difference is we don't need equal access. We don't. It costs more for our education. It takes us longer to get educated. Like the deck is so stacked that just getting it equal is not enough. It needs to be an equity conversation. So when you think about it, what's the actual problem that's going on? And while this is specific to tech, this is also specific to tech sales. And I should probably go back. Let me go back. Just so you know, I have a bachelor's, a master's, an MBA, and my doctorate of business administration. I have definitely owned a business. It was open 365 days a year. Talk about stressful. And I've also sold, and I sold for Groupon. I loved my time at Groupon. I became one hell of a share person, not a salesperson. I'm a share person, and I was good at it. But it's a 90 call per day grind, and I was definitely in the trenches. So my heart goes out to those in sales. I actually do get it. I also have a very strong affinity for sales because it is the one profession where you can literally give yourself a raise anytime you want. And we are not actually held back by anything other than the white men we're probably trying to sell to, or the males that we're trying to sell to, or the non-females, or right. But we do have a chance to make that influence. So the problem is that literally from the jump, we had restrictions when it came to getting into schools. We were excluded from the initial fair pay negotiations. We experienced violence and microaggressions in the workplace. And then once we finally kind of made it, there were faculty purges and Jim Crow laws. So if you are a BIPOC woman, meaning a Black, Indigenous person of color, if you have any other type of intersectionality, be it LGBTQ, perhaps you are pansexual, maybe you're fluid, it gets even worse. But we are going to talk about it. So the question then is, and it was a really interesting statistic I came across. It said 80% of women, 80% of women leaders said that it was their spouse or spousal equivalent providing support that allowed them to get ahead. Now, we're friends. I've been married 4 times. 3 of them were not good. 1 of them is great. And that's not so much just because this is the current marriage that I'm in. It's objectively looking at the support and encouragement. So I was like, well, I can't tell women to go get married. It's not always great. But I definitely don't want to tell women to go get divorced either. So that's not great. So what are the social support systems? What are those partners providing that allow women to flourish? Because companies that have women in management increase financial returns 15 to 35%. That's fact. It's even quoted. So every time you go into negotiations from now on, just understand you're part of 15 to 35% increase in profits. As you negotiate, bring that in. Let's talk about where we are. So I hope everyone has like a pencil, piece of paper. I'm going to ask you to keep score. Ready? Dope. Gender microaggressions plague women's experiences in STEM fields and education, and this might as well say sales and everywhere else in the world. Have you ever experienced a microaggression from an educator or mentor? If you have, just give yourself a point. There is literally an epidemic of culturally inept mentorship that women in STEM education and other areas, we literally lack proper mentorship to advance to leadership positions. If we lack it to advance to leadership positions, we lack it within our actual teams. So if you don't feel you're getting as much support when you are out there selling or trying to create change, you are probably not getting it. During my study, I asked, who has discouraged you? My study consisted of 21 women. And someone verbatim quote, every man I've ever dated and my ex-husband. I just like to say it's actually not my quote. I mean, it could be my quote, but it's not my quote. So give yourself a point if you have not been supported by a partner. Because what I found is 80% of women, as I said, relied on their partner for social support, but 89% of women in my study had been discouraged by their partners. So how does that work? Like, make the math make sense. Let's look at work-life balance. So if I wasn't doing laundry and dishes between meetings, I'd probably prepare for my next meeting, go for a walk, read, or just exhale. I imagine this is what a lot of men are doing. Not the preparing for meeting, not the laundry and the dishes. I'm not saying none of them are. I'm just saying, potentially. So go ahead and give yourself 1 point if you do work from home and you're doing chores between meetings. If you feel a bit overwhelmed, you're not imagining it. There's literally been a 38% decrease in work-life balance since COVID-19. If you feel 38% more stressed, you are. And 85% of us are completing domestic chores during breaks. That means you're not strategizing for your next meeting. Now, if the men in the room are strategizing for the next meeting and you're not, wonder who's going to have a better meeting. Wonder who's going to seem more brilliant. That's on top of the fact if you actually give an idea, they ignore it, and then a man says it, and But let's talk about ambition. I was told to stop asking questions, and that by asking questions, I wasn't demonstrating leadership abilities. I've actually heard something similar to this be told to me. This one always it makes me pause. And then the first time it happens, this person was only 3 years into their professional career, and an executive director told me, point blank, you're too ambitious. If you've been told you're too ambitious, give yourself a point. In my study of 21 women, 95% of women were told to be more and less assertive. It's kind of like telling somebody to go for a run while sitting down. Just what? How does that work? Let's talk about passing on opportunities. I took my current role today instead of a more exciting one because my husband was starting medical school and there were 3 little kids, and that was not going to be a fit. Another woman said that they were offered a position in 2015, but they'd have to travel. And my daughter, who just turned 1, was starting to notice I was absent. If you have passed on a work opportunity, go ahead and give yourself a point. A 100% of women wanted to take on a new project or role, but 70% passed on the work opportunity. And now, just for a minute, and maybe in the chat, I'd like to make sure. I love that Shayna's I'd like to make sure that we're all friends. So if we're friends, just throw an emoji or something in the chat. Before we go into this next section, I need a moment to feel like we're really together. Okay. Thank you, Liz. All right. I see y'all. We're talking about intersectionality. But you said we were friends, so it's going to be okay. When companies say gender equality, what they usually are talking about are white women, not me. They talk a lot about X amount of women at the executive level, or we have 50% women. But what they really mean is white women. When you look across your sales floor and you see the few women that have made it, how many of them are white women? Because as I mentioned earlier, when you pile on intersectionality, which means the converging of two groups that are marginalized, that's intersectionality, it just gets heavier and heavier. I don't make the same money. I don't know why, but I am the only Black woman on the team. Are any of y'all on a team with only one Black woman? Are any of y'all on a team with no Black women? You know what it's like to be the only woman in the room, especially if you're a woman or identify as a woman on this call. But do you know what it's like to then be the only Black woman? I don't even know what to say to that, Liz, except they need to do better. Send them my way. So let's talk about what we need to do to get past it, because maybe we just all need to take a collective deep breath when there's no Black women in the company, no BIPOC women on our team, one Black woman on the team. Let me just to share it with you. For me, when I am the only of anything, anywhere, it feels like I am in a dark alley walking by myself at night. Now try to perform your job on top of that. Because you're so busy looking over your shoulder or trying to hurry out of the alley or trying to ascertain if you're safe or doubting if you should actually be feeling any of this. I share that with y'all because I think it's important that as a sisterhood, we are aware of what it feels like for all of us, because this is not a singular struggle. Something else I will point out, which was really shocking that I came across in my study, when I asked who was the biggest supporter or mentor, I just knew it was going to be another woman of color, another senior woman. It was actually white men. I'm now a bigger fan of white men than I've ever been in my life before. So what are the recommendations? I need y'all to focus in on 3 critical areas: personal support, professional career growth, and mental health and wellness. So what my study has now made true is that house cleaning services are an equity play. It's not a nice to have. It's not something you're spoiled by. It's not something you need to apologize to your mother-in-law about, or your father-in-law about, or your aunt, or your uncle, or explain it to anyone else. Getting your house cleaned by a professional is an equity play. Sending your laundry out is an equity play. Having your groceries delivered is an equity play. Having a meal prep service, Blue Apron, HelloFresh, equity play. Having dependent care services is an equity play. And if it's an equity play and work-life balance initiatives optimize corporate profitability, there's something like a 21% gap in profitability when you don't have a gender diverse executive team, right? 15 to 35% increase in profitability when you have diverse management teams and workforce. So if it's an equity play, guess what? That means companies need to stop with the gym memberships and they need to start providing house cleaning services. Let's just talk about it. Like, when was the last time you went to work at the office and cleaned it? Anybody cleaning their office when they went to work? Well, your home is now your office. So at the very least, the company should be cleaning the office. You know how much it would actually cost a company to provide house cleaning services? Real question, because I hate doing math. But seriously, if they provided a quarterly house cleaning service, I feel like it wouldn't break the bank. If they offered a stipend for dependent care transportation, I feel like all of us would focus much better on our work when we're not worried about how we're going to get our kids here to there, or if they're sitting at the curb, or if you left too late. Jennifer, yeah, we're not cleaning offices anymore. Mm-mm. It would just get nasty dirty. So the 21% gap in profits due to the lack of gender diverse executive teams is fact. It is science. It is not pretend. You can quote it. You can quote me and you can quote Hunt. So if we're talking about equity plays, it takes longer for us to complete school. Why? We stop to have kids. Why? We stop doing the assignment to take care of sick kids. Now, this is not to bash men. I have an incredibly supportive husband. However, I will point out that when he had COVID and I had COVID, one of us was still working. One of us was still heating up the soup. One of us was crying man tears. I mean, I'm not. I love my husband. He really is supportive. But there is a difference. Flexible schedules are an equity play. You're having to get up with your kids. You need to make them breakfast. You deserve that time. Companies should be offering this. Unlimited PTO is the least expensive way a company can literally give a perk that costs them nothing. And with the 2 week severance or 2 weeks vacation pay that they would have to pay out if they actually had a set number of vacation days, I would like them to provide us with house cleaning services, meal delivery services, dependent care, transportation stipends, friendly co-working spaces. Each and every one of you deserves a coach or a trainer. Each and every one of you deserves, as an equity play, sponsorship and mentorship. Absolutely, remote work. The difference between sponsorship and mentorship, right? Sponsorship is the person that's in the room when you're not, that's actually pushing you forward. Mentorship is somebody that's talking about how you get in the room with yourself. Just to understand the difference. I love this, Susie. So remote means I get to spend time with my kid, which also means in between meetings, you may not be spending that time strategizing, which is not a criticism. It's a call out. Because if businesses offered a dependent care stipend for when you're in the home, I know some businesses have actually started saying that you can pay your family members out of the stipend, which puts money back into the home. Like, they just need to do this. They can afford to do this. They should be offering mental health services. I do mean that free of charge. They should be offering DI and B support. And let me just pause here. Diversity and inclusion is lovely. But if you don't feel like you belong, once you get there, what difference does it make? Companies need to invest in belonging. Enough with the diversity. What about the belonging? What are the programs that are in place for mentorship, for sponsorship, once we bring in the women, once we bring in the BIPOC people, once we bring in the Black men? Like, what happens? Why can't we have co-working spaces? Okay, so let's say, oh, you're remote. Everything's a co-working space. It is much different to have a co-work friendly environment with your job. That means your child is here and you're not apologizing for it or explaining it. It literally is a co-working space. Talk about the amount of attrition that would be reduced if my child was welcomed at the foot of my desk, not to mention the leaders that we produce. This is an actual question. So have any of y'all been at one of the women's events that don't allow children to come along? Just riddle me that. Just help me out with that. We're literally disproportionately having to take care of them, but very few professional events actually allow children to come. I encourage you all, as you're going to these next events, as you're planning these events, make child-friendly spaces available. Make it available. Gyms figured it out, right? Like, that's how they got us all to go to the gym and like torture our bodies. No, it's important to work out. But right, they like have the on-site childcare somehow, and that $11.99 or $25, right? They're allowed, they figured it out. And then a flexible wellness stipend. And it is imperative that companies like take the training wheels off of this. They're like, well, you can't use it for group classes, but you can use it for a subscription, but you can't use it to buy your hiking shoes. Just give me the flexible wellness stipend. Let me use it. I know what wellness means for me. So these are things that you can budget to put in place depending on your financial situation. I'd like you to prioritize doing, but I'd also like you to go back to your companies and say, hey, you know what? Benefits at, have you considered house cleaning stipends? Have you considered meal delivery stipends? Have you considered a dependent care stipend that's flexible so I can reimburse my family if that's who's taking care of my children? Have you considered a wellness stipend that actually lets me do the event I like without you looking at what I'm doing? What does it really look like to belong here? So that is me rambling. Thank you so much. Let's talk now because I've said enough, I think. How do we feel about it?
I think you brought up so many good points. And one thing that kind of comes to my head is I think that, like you point out the stat of how a lot of businesses that have women within leadership tend to see a lot more profits. They tend to see more strategic conversations happening. However, a lot of men, especially, won't necessarily see the benefits of creating an equitable place, not an equal place. And I think that's a hard conversation to kind of have. What are kind of ways, or have you already encouraged or found ways to kind of have conversations with leadership that can provide the differences rather than just what is equal and make sense for not just the majority of people in the room, but for the few in the room?
Yeah, I think it's really important, number one, that like individuals are not tasked with that work. It is not your job to educate your company. And I think the encouragement needs to be on bringing in people, outside people, to have these conversations. There is no way you're going to have this conversation and still be everybody's friend. You shouldn't be put in that situation. So I think that's the thing, like encouraging companies to say, hey, have you heard of this speaker? Would you bring the speaker in? I think that's critically important. You shouldn't have to explain it. You shouldn't have to do that lift. We're already showing up as women. My gosh, what else do they want us to do? That would be my take. So I would encourage you. You can send them my info. I'll be happy to tell them that we don't need to be equal. We need to be equitable. But whoever you bring in, and that's where companies fall short. They organize ERGs. I'm very fortunate. I work for a company that actually has a fully staffed ERG that they pay. Right? But the places that don't, and they just have all these volunteers, that's just called wrong. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. And if you are currently volunteering, you need to delicately have the question and conversation, pose a question and have a conversation about, like, is there something that we can do to support the extra effort we're putting in? Can we get an increase on the educational stipend you already offer? Can we get an additional volunteer day of 8 hours to rest and recuperate? Can we get a speaker to come in? Can we get a programmer to come in and literally look at our programs, look at our talk tracks, look at how we approach things and make recommendations to make it better? And I'd love to say, like, I can't say this enough. I have an incredible husband. He is my biggest cheerleader in this. Even when I go on a rant on the rails, because there is no off the rails, I can talk about anything. And I have the right to do so. He supports it. But that's out of how many men I've dated. So this is not a men are bad conversation. This is a men may be unaware. And this is a women have the right to advocate. Women have the right to an equitable workplace experience. And when we do, we're going to increase your profits 15 to 35%. Seems like a great trade. Did that answer your question, Jacqueline? Okay.
I how I think that I work for a fairly forward-thinking company in terms of equity. They have generously policies, but the challenge is really, and I don't know how to describe this besides just saying it. If I take the time off that is owed to me or that I have earned, the snowball of work is still there. And there is a true sense that if I leave, my teammates are just going to be shouldering that much more. And so we basically are throwing the hot potato to one another, right? Everybody gets a chance to handle the hot potato. Is that an equity issue? Is that a capitalism issue? You know, because I feel like everybody suffers with that.
Mhm.
Men, women, parents, everybody.
I think it's a management issue. Because when you take off, what should actually happen is your manager should come in and pick up that slack, not your colleague. A lot of managers don't know that though. So I think the conversation is really around, and again, I hesitate for individual contributors to have this conversation because you're having a conversation at a management level, so you're already at a disadvantage. And the last thing I want is for you to speak up for yourself and then have negative repercussions, which happen the first time you hear something, it usually doesn't go well.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, what I'd really like to do, our team to do in 2024 is set up a plan so that when we are out of the office, we are able to step away and step back with the same volume of work. So that it is truly time out of the office. Again, I will say, I work for an incredible company. We shut down for 1 week, totally. And then no work goes on. So you don't come back to a full inbox. And there's an expectation that the first 3 days you're out from an extended leave, you don't have those meetings. That is literally your free catch up, ramp back up time. It's an incredible thing. But the conversation I would have is say, you know what, Katie, because I love our Chief People Officer, Katie Burke. So Katie just popped into mind. And I could see her having this conversation with someone. But like, hey, what I'd like to see for our team is that we figure out a way for people to go on break and come back and not have an avalanche of work. Right now, we've been parsing that out among each other within the team. But I was wondering if there's a way that we can adjust our schedules so that you as our manager can step in and buffer some of that work so it truly decreases the amount of friction when employees are out and return. Because I'm kind of feeling guilty when I go out on leave. And if I'm feeling it, it's possible somebody else is. Is that something that perhaps like we could brainstorm through?
Mm-hmm.
And then on that company survey, you fill out that same thing anonymously. Keep it real high level, maybe change the way you talk, use AI to generate it. They can't trace it back to you. But I really do appreciate that question, Stacey, because I know you're not the only one that faces that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Awesome, great. Carissa. Hi.
Hello. I'm kind of taking it in a slightly different direction, I suppose, but
Great.
kind of looking at and I definitely have this as from like almost like that sales perspective, but having authority support and authority provided from male colleagues going into whether it's client calls or colleague meetings. So the number of times where, my male counterpart says, oh, Carissa could probably talk way better on this topic, and then they just start talking over. So it's like, okay, well, that was an attempt to potentially lift me up and provide me with authority on whatever the topic might be. But at the same time, it necessarily wasn't. So I think that part of it too is having discussions where, I don't know, like having like how to properly do that, how to segue and hand off discussions, especially for women too, where, especially in certain industries, like you need that support. You need those, people to vouch for you to say like, oh no, Carissa should talk on this. But yeah, and it's a conversation where it's like the intention is there, but it's not quite where it needs to be.
Not quite there.
Yeah.
Almost. I just missed it. No, that's super valid. And I think number one, I'll say it again. It is not your job to educate the masses. They need to bring in professionals. However, that being said, the reason that it's so important to have mentorship is because there are these scenarios and you deserve a right to talk about them before they hit you or impact them after they do. So if we had this conversation before, or since we're having it now, the next time it happens, when they say, Carissa could probably answer this better, but nope, I got you, Brian.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, let's say Brian keeps on going. I got you, Brian. And he's like, keeps on going. Then afterwards you say, Brian, I really want to thank you for calling me into that conversation. I really appreciate that. You set me up as an expert and it felt great. I was hoping that next time you'd actually let me continue to contribute to that conversation because
Mhm.
it would be really great for me to build that relationship and showcase the expertise that you alluded to.
Mhm.
But it is so uncomfortable. Wow, is it uncomfortable?
Well, and especially too in remote work, it's like, oh, let's hop on a Zoom to, huddle on how that call went specifically to call that out.
Yeah,
If you
it's
didn't
tough.
necessarily huddle afterwards anyways.
And I'll say this, number one, every woman on this call specifically, um, absolutely has already done tough things. This is just another one of them.
Mm.
So I'll say that as a bit of encouragement. The second thing I will say is if you write down what you are going to say, like I literally have a list of when he says, it's literally called the when he says list. It's just like right here or right here. So that when he says, I was going to turn it over to V, but she did it, but I can take it. I say, oh, thanks so much, Mark. It's actually Dr. V, and I'd like to take it from here.
Mhm.
They're already going to think you're assertive. You're in the space.
Mhm.
They're already going to think who knows what and who knows this and who knows who. And it's none of your business what other people think about you if you're showing up the best that you can in the moment that you can. Period. So if it's not any of your business, why are we also not only policing our own emotions, policing our own reactions, but additionally policing and trying to support the reactions of the men in our spaces? It's a great thing, and you can talk to your manager about it. My manager, actually, Al Smith, is just joined the call, which I appreciate. One of the things he does is he watches me during meetings. And when I say, he says, you know what, it looks like Dr. V, you have something to say. What did you want to add? When he sees me come off mute. But one of the things we did when we first met was talk about how I wanted to be supported in meetings. So it's a new year. Reset with your manager. Al, when I come off mute, I'd like you to look for that during meetings so I can contribute. Set that with your stakeholders. Set that with your teammates. Brian, we're going to go into this call. Look, when I have something to add that I think is important, if you could be looking for it, I'm going to come off mute as a signal. Will you help me monitor that? Will you call me into conversations? Brian, I think in this conversations, I have at least 4 main points I want to add. I'm looking to you to help me create space to share them. Does that sound fair? It doesn't always feel good to do it in the moment, but if you do it beforehand, and then let's say Brian doesn't do it, you can say, hey, Brian, I noticed I came off mute a couple times. I think you missed that. Is there a better system that we should use, or was it just something you missed this time?
Mhm.
Because I want to make sure I'm adding value to this conversation as well. Are those some actionable items that could help?
Yeah, and it's me and we're co-founders, so it's a hard conversation to have. It's not even like I'm not necessarily kind of a mentor like relationship, but that kind of adds it to another level. But having those conversations are just really hard. But
It is, and you can
the
say,
talk tracks are good.
absolutely, like, hey, as I have learned so much from you, and I'm so appreciative of all the mentorship. And I think in 2024, I'm ready to take it a step further. So I'm going to
Hmm.
start coming off mute more. Like,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah, a little
a
heads
little
up.
a little pat to the ego never hurt.
Uh-huh.
It never hurt. Who else has a question or a discussion or something to share?
Dr. V, I noticed that in the chat, Susie said she's found that she really has to seek out mentorship, whereas men often have that proactive outreach. Is there a trick to sort of building that network and building those mentorship relationships?
Yes, seek out mentorship. No, like seriously, how many people have you? I have a quick question for everyone. How many people have you asked to be your mentor in your career? Jacqueline, is this a number? I saw you. Does that mean none?
I think in some capacity, there are some people that I look to as mentors, but maybe I haven't verbalized, like, will you be my mentor? Are there people that I consider mentors? Yes, absolutely. But I don't know if I would say that I've vocalized and asked, will you be my mentor?
Interesting. Wait, no, in your whole career. Just I'm looking at the numbers in the chat, like in your whole career. in your whole, your whole career. Really? Why? You should make it a habit. You should ask people to be your mentor. 10 years, 2 people. All right, Susie, this is what the conversation looks like. I really admire the way that you are able to navigate difficult conversations within the team, within the company meeting. I really admire how you were able to present that topic so clearly. I really appreciated the response you added to the chat about X. I really want to get better at that. Do you have time in your day over the next 3 to 6 months to provide some direct mentorship to me to help me get better at this skill? You literally ask for it. There are some things we just don't feel as comfortable doing that men naturally do. I'm going to give you a secret. I'm on hormone replacement therapy because we said we were friends, right? Okay, so I get testosterone pellets. When I get those testosterone pellets, I will ask anyone for anything. I'll be, hey, excuse me, Biden, yes, I was hoping that you could do some social justice reform on this particular area. What? Yeah, V. Boykin, that's me. Yeah, you'll get to it. Great. When should I expect to hear back? Like, I can tell you, a little bit of testosterone is the most powerful thing. So I say that because chemically, it may truly be more uncomfortable because when the pellets wear off, I'm like, so if we potentially have a chemical disadvantage of being pointed and assertive in some of our communication, then we just have to do better. We just have to push it. Yes, testosterone will give us all equity. I encourage anyone. I'm 50. I don't know how old you are. I'm not asking. However, hormone replacement therapy is an incredible thing. With that, I don't want to trivialize how incredibly scary, challenging, and daunting it can be to ask someone for something. But we must ask for space in meetings. We must ask for cross-functional assignments. We must ask for skip level visibility into our accomplishments. We must ask for mentorship. We must ask for sponsorship. We must enlist people in our success. And there is no trick to doing that other than directly asking. I want to become a manager. Would you support me in that? If so, will you develop an action plan with me? Put them on the hook. Do I feel that mentors within my organization are better because they're aligned with day-to-day, or do I think external is better? I think if you are being perceived as overly aggressive, difficult to work with, challenging, unresponsive, bratty, bitchy, bossy, I think it's important to work within your organization with a mentor because they understand the specific dynamics that will allow you to repair your reputation. They understand the player and the landscape. I think when it comes to, well, then I think you're an incredible person, Stacey. I think when it comes to learning skills around communication, around strategy development, around operationalizing programs, around developing corporate gravitas and presence, I think external is better because I think that the internal person, depending on their experience, may not have as much of a worldwide, varied experience background and have skills that they have potentially used in a multitude of companies that are therefore transferable and would be more valuable to you. That's just me personally. There is not a better mentor you can find for how I am viewed as an individual contributor within my company than my manager out. Period, point blank. There is not a better mentor I could find in how to present myself and grow myself as a scholar than my chair who is outside. So that's how I look at it. Awesome, Heather. Other questions? Anybody else want to share some thoughts? Because, I mean, Erica kind of decided I was an expert. No, it doesn't mean it's true. Tell me. Y'all probably have good stuff too.
Yeah, I would love to hear anyone else's experiences, challenges.
Susie's working full time and owns a business. Oh, Susie. Yeah. You get
I
it.
would
Hi, this is Esther Angel, and I
Hi.
was curious to hear a little bit of your opinion, because I have my opinion on this,
Okay.
around women taking ownership of this. I think sometimes we have a dialogue that says these things should be happening, and we're not always encouraged to take ownership of it. For example, I loved your point of mentorship. You can ask for those things as opposed to, well, my organization's not providing someone to mentor me. So I think there is a lot of power and empowerment in taking ownership of that. I'm not going to wait for someone to do this for me. I'm going to take ownership of this and ask for the thing, put myself out there for the thing. Do you have any both thoughts and advice, especially for people, young people that are coming up to do that?
I think that's a great question, and I agree with you. I think the best way to be empowered to ask someone to be your mentor is to mentor someone else.
Yeah.
And I will tell you why. When you mentor someone else, first of all, it is the biggest ego boost you will ever have. If you are looking for confidence, go mentor someone, like change someone's life with them. Oh my gosh. And once you do that, you will understand how incredibly flattering and rewarding it is to be someone's mentor. And it will reduce your anxiety or caution around asking someone to be your mentor by at least 50%. If you knew how good it felt, you would not hesitate to ask. There is nothing more flattering. There is no better way to spend my time. It is like getting a $10,000 raise. And Al, I don't need a raise. I'm well compensated. He's like, what? Wait, hold on. How did? Yeah. But seriously, go mentor someone.
Mhm.
That would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is two things can be true at the same time. So you can say to your company, I would really like to have a mentorship program here, and you're not providing that. Therefore, I would like to take my educational stipend and go pay for one. Therefore, I'm going to find someone outside. Therefore, I'd like you to bring in the speaker to talk about it. Therefore, I'd like you to create change. Therefore, I'd like you to do this because it'll increase your profitability by 15 to 35% if I feel comfortable, safe, and belonging, like I belong at my company. So there's all that. But you're
Yeah,
going to be asked to do hard things. So my frontline response is do it anyway. Take ownership anyway.
agreed. 100% agreed. And there's so many opportunities. I think you find that in, for instance, in HubSpot or in other organizations. In Central Pennsylvania, there's a technology council that started a mentoring program that we work with. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. So sometimes bringing it to the table as well. Hey, this is something I'm going to participate in. I think we should offer this to the whole organization. Thank you.
Absolutely. If you have any mentorship links, y'all can drop those in too. I love your name. Oh my gosh. You have to write a book just to pen that out. Come on. I'm just saying, what? That's snazzy.
Love it.
That is snazzy. That's a great point though. Thank you for bringing that up.
I have a question. So I work at a small company. We're about 25 people. There's not a lot of general benefits, like in general, because we're a small company. There's just not the ability, like, to provide so much. And so when we talk about what are opportunities or spaces where we might have conversations or kind of look to it or encourage growth or space, I'm kind of interested in what options, whether it's you, Dr. V, or anyone else in the chat, of different ways to provide that. What are the most important things that we should be asking for or looking for when there's not spaces for unlimited PTO, there's not like education funds, there's not all these great, beautiful things. They're just not, it's not capable, it's not possible with the size of company we're at.
I am so excited by this question. Okay, I'm going to jump in first, and then I'll definitely give the floor to others. You have the opportunity to ask for access. You have the opportunity to ask for access. You are 24 people away from the CEO. That's already an easier climb than a lot of other, like a 7,000 person company. So you should be asking for stretch assignments. You should be asking for cross-functional work. You should be asking to present in front of the CEO. You should be asking to be part of those leadership council meetings, right? Like when they get together, you should say to them, hey, you know what? I know that we don't have the resources for big benefits, but can I sit in? Can we do a program where we have rotations, where we sit in on the executive meetings? Because I'm pretty sure they're having executive meeting. I'm sure there's meetings you're not in, right? Can you get in those? Could you start a mentorship program? Could you start an access program? Could I be part of this Tiger team, this extra team? Like this is a time and this is a scenario where it makes sense to accept some stretch assignments, with the caveat that stretch assignments mean that you're getting cross-functional exposure or C-suite exposure. So that's what you don't have to give me PTO. You mean to tell me I can be part of this really fancy title product launch or rollout or executive meeting, or to see those inner workings? Yeah. Anybody else have something they'd like to share on that topic? I'm excited though, like 24 people away from the CEO. Yeah. What are you going to ask for? I just have to know. Like, you're going to ask for something. What are you going to ask for, Jacqueline? What are you going to ask for? What do you want to see?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think that I have had a lot of great, I actually work directly with the CEO, so I've had a lot of
Okay.
direct connection and I'm able to ask. I think he's a great advocate for me. So more so than anything, I think when going to these conversations, of course I want to learn, but I also want to see what are more ways that within the company I can help more women who are joining the workforce or joining within our company and kind of give them the same level, because I'm not afraid to ask for a lot of things, which is why I think I have that level of where I can do that. However, I know not everybody has the same interest in learning all these things, but and some people are just afraid to ask. So part of it, I think, is mentorship, but I think trying to get the inner workings or understand more C-suite exposure, or I think I like what you said about even asking for stretch assignments. I think I currently take on a lot of stretch assignments, but I think making the ask is also something that's a great way to if I only know what I know, so I might be assuming. And so I think it's a great way to try to learn a little bit more.
What's your
So I'll
title?
chime in on something. Oh, sorry.
What's your title, Jacqueline?
I'm the director of marketing.
I would ask for a title, step title increase to senior director, executive director. Number one, I definitely ask for that. And then the second thing that I would ask for is exposure into other companies. So the networking events that you have with other same size companies, I would ask to be the face of the company. If you're going to work for a company with 25 people, I would absolutely make it so that I did every single function in that company with excellence and could point to it for my next interview. The second thing I would do, because you're asking how you can help others, why not start an internship program? Why don't negotiate with that CEO that you're working directly adjacent to and say, in the next year, I would like to open a position where we have an intern that comes in and they get to skip frontline this and this, and we're going to give them this role when they're done. So we're going to find a qualified candidate. Are you doing that?
I already run our internship program, which is great. I really enjoy that, and it's a great program for students to join in. And would be just for my role, I think this is more niche, and we can absolutely talk more after this too.
Yeah.
If you want to jump even more into it, but within my space, we already have a someone who has the role of our partner, role in our partner program. So they already are the face with a lot of our partners. And so I don't want to step on toes. I'm happy to jump in a marketing sense. But I think there's some boundaries that I just don't want to get in trouble for, or I can make the ask, and I have made the ask, but it's out of my space. And additionally, there are, I think that my president is very open, where if I said, hey, can you make an introduction to this person or this company or whatever, or can I do this? You'd absolutely say yes. But some of it is just learning what questions should I ask and what are the spaces to kind of understand where there are more opportunity.
Yeah, let's connect. And Esther, did you have something you wanted to, let's seriously, that's not just like pandering. I mean it. Esther?
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say I've done in the past is find that person. A lot of times it's men who are about to retire and they are looking to pass on a lot of knowledge or interest. Like, so they've been doing this for 50 years and they want to impart this knowledge. So whether it's the person who's in charge of partnerships or whether it's the person that executive, there's a few times in my career where I've gone to them and said, I want to be at this different level. I want to grow my career, love to be in the seat at some point. What are the areas you think that I could grow in? And if they give you some feedback, you can say, could you help me and keep me in mind for those growth opportunities? So I actually had people ask me the question and made me think, oh my God, yes, I want to do that thing. And then they gave me the opportunity. So now it's putting an impetus on them. It's also stroking their ego, because that's what's driving a lot of people in community leadership. Like there's an ego stroke to say, hey, you're important. You're a really important person. Can you help me be more important? And they're like, well, yes, I can help you be more important.
I love that. Thank you.
So true. Any other questions? Erica, how are we doing on time?
We're getting close, but I just think that we could maybe just stay for 3 hours.
Nobody wants to spend 3 hours with me. I'll be so sweaty by then, it won't even be fun.
Just like the number of times that I've gotten goosebumps during this conversation, like I've lost track. Yeah, does anyone have anything last minute? Otherwise, we'll all get to connecting on LinkedIn, clearly.
I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So grateful for your time today, Dr. Boykin, just
My
beyond.
pleasure.
This was the conversation that I needed. Hopefully y'all needed it as well.
Thanks, everyone. I look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn.
Take care, friends.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.